All right, I think I found something pretty crazy. The word prince in the Bible does not mean prince like we think it means. Heir to the throne, son's king's son, whatnot. Now, it's used 187 times in the Orthodox Jewish version, this word I'm going to say. Um, and I didn't, forgive me, I didn't track 187 times. So there's probably some that I missed that actually mean king's son. But for the most part, that is not what it means. The word is Sarim, Sarim, and it's looking like a role appointed by God, an angel in some fashion. So to explain, I was looking for something different. I noticed a pattern where non-Israelite people were noticing angels and non-human beings. Thought that was kind of interesting. So I want to see how far I could take that. First example is in Daniel 3:18 when Nebuchadnezzar puts Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fire, and he notices four people. Specifically, I see four men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. King James Version gives us sons of God to mean angels, and the first example of that is Genesis 6. This thing that keeps popping up everywhere, sons of God. I thought that was interesting that Nebuchadnezzar, a non-believer, pagan, if you will, could see that this fourth person was not human. Now, the next example, it's about Gideon. Now, I have a podcast coming out in September that is a deep dive into the judges. So I'm going to respect that and wait till it's done to actually do some more videos on it because the judges thing is really wild. But Gideon specifically, he was already mentioned as being a Gibberim, which I've done videos on this. The Gibberim comes from the giant, the Nephilim bloodline. But when Gideon is talking to Zeba and Zalmunna, he's asking. They were just in a fight, and he's talking to them who they were dealing with, and they say each one resembled the children of a king, as thou art. So they, non-believers, non-Israelites, could see Gideon was not all the way human, which is really crazy. So they kind of puts this whole thing into more of a perspective that it's not just the Israelites, that the whole world is seeing these giants and all this craziness on the world. But this next example is when it really started to take a left turn. So in Daniel 10:18, I've used this example plenty of times to show that angels were still coming down, and fallen angels were helping to build nations, and that's where government. I've done videos, and I've talked some crazy stuff about that. But specifically in normal versions, it says the prince of the kingdom of Persia was standing before me 21 days, but Michael, the chief officer, came to help. Now, Michael is an angel. We find out later he is an angel. But when you dive really far into that whole scripture, it says Sar Malchut Paras, which is the prince of the kingdom of Persia. And this is where I started noticing the prince pattern. It doesn't mean prince like we think it does. Because Michael is referred to as the Sarim Ha-Rishonim, not the chief officer. In Hebrew, he's the Sarim Ha-Rishonim, which Sarim translates to prince, ruler, or official. And then Ha-Rishonim translates to the early ones or the first ones. So that's when I started to notice this prince thing. So I went down to, I deep dived Sarim, the word Sarim, to see really what princes mean. Because certain translations have it prince, certain translations have it as captain of the host. What does that mean? Now, a bunch of examples I have pulled out of Sarim being used. It's being used, again, as a title, but with Gibberim, and with the Shofetim, which is the judges. And again, I can't go too far into that out of respect for this podcast coming out, but the Shofetim, the judges, was again a position pointed by God. So let's go through some of these examples. In Jeremiah 48:7, for because thou hast trusted in thy works and in thy treasures, thou shalt also be taken. And Shamash, shall go forth into captivity with his priests and his princes together. Now, Shamash, we know, is a little g god. So why would they be mentioning his sons or the heirs to his royal throne? It's not what princes means. Staying in Jeremiah, and when Jehoiakim the king, with all his Gibberim and all the Sarim, heard his words, the king sought to be put him to death. So the Gibberim and the Sarim were a group together. And the Gibberim, we know, are giants. And then we've got in Amos 2:3, and I will cut off the Shophet, the judges, from the midst thereof, and will slay all the Sarim thereof with him. So in this sense, the judges and the Sarim, free will, are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that just further backs that they are appointed in some fashion, spiritual or angelic. Not quite sure. I haven't been able to figure that out, but this is pretty crazy. And then you've got her Sarim within her, our roaring Ariat, which are lions. Her Shophetim are evening wolves. So they're, again, just examples of Sarim, the princes, and the Shophetim being bad, falling into sin, basically. Really gets interesting when you get into First Chronicles, because First Chronicles is the David and his mighty men story as well. The second part of it, when they're more explaining everybody, and you see how more interwoven the Sarim and the Gibberim are. First Chronicles 29:24, and all the Sarim and the Gibberim and all of, and this is interesting, all of the king's sons. So it's the princes and the king's sons are mentioned in the same sentence. Of David submitted themselves unto Solomon, the king. So when Solomon became king, Solomon inherited all of David's giants, all of David's Gibberim, and the Sarim, all the princes. So what is that? But what's crazy is the first time Sarim or princes is mentioned in the Bible is in Egypt, very beginning in Genesis, where it mentions Pharaoh and his princes, Pharaoh and his Sarim. So this is, of course, I'm sorry, Moab, Edom, Syria, all the Philistines, all the land in all the nations have Sarim, have princes, but none of them are mentioned genealogically. Like, it's not listed as the king's sons, the heirs, this and this and this and this. They're just random people. So yeah, pretty crazy that all the nations are mentioned as having Sarim or princes, that Michael was a Sarim ha Rishonim. Yeah,